Welcome back to Star Spangled Gamblers. We're a political betting podcast. That's right, we bet real money on politics. Today we'll be talking about all things Brett Kavanaugh. As always, we won't give you our opinion, but we'll tell you what's going to happen, at least as we see it. We're the Star Spangled Gamblers, and this is the Supreme Court Circus.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Star Spangled Gamblers. As always, I'm Brandon Thompson, and with me here is my co-host Alex Keeney. Today we're going to be talking about all things Kavanaugh, some markets on how the senators are going to vote, and trying to look behind the doors of what might be happening on Capitol Hill right now. But before we get into all of that, Alex is going to spend a few minutes offering a male perspective on how to improve the Me Too movement.
Unsubscribe.
For anyone who doesn't understand sarcasm, that was a joke. How's it going, Alex?
It's going well. I've been sweating through this week like the rest of you. What are the words? It's been certainly dramatic for those of you who watch the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. And if you're looking at politics through the lens we are, which, as you know, is gambling, there's been a lot of volatility in the predicted market. So one thing that a lot of you guys hit us up after our first podcast about was, how exactly does political gambling work? So we'll drop in a quick 10, 20-second tutorial here. We'll use a website called PredictIt. That's predictit.org. It's safe and legal. I won't go into detail about why. It's an outcome-based gambling. So you can vote or buy, I should say, a yes or a no on any outcome you think of. So today we're going to be talking about Brett Kavanaugh. We're going to be talking about, will he be the next Supreme Court justice? You can buy yes on that for 60-some cents at any given time. You can buy no on it for 30-some cents. And if you get it right, your 60 cents, your 30 cents becomes $1. If you get it wrong, it becomes nothing. And if you day trade it, you can sell it for any price as the market goes up and down based on that. So today we're here to ask the same question over and over again in a different way. Will Brett Kavanaugh be the next Supreme Court justice? Brandon, I have been approaching this a couple different ways, but lately I've actually been pushing my chips in at yes, Brett Kavanaugh will be the next Supreme Court justice at 66 cents. That's where I'm pushing my chips right now. Are you playing this market?
Honestly, it makes me too nervous to get in just because I don't know. It's just so volatile. We don't know what's going to happen over the next 7 days, even more so than the normal climate. Having said that, I do think that your approach is the best one to take if you want to get in there, which is to just bet on the ultimate outcome and not try to horse trade with individual people. I think that's hard.
Yeah, it feels like there's another big bomb coming, right? Like I feel like until the end of this story, there's just always another thing coming.
Yeah, and here's the huge question mark that I'm sure a lot of people are buzzing about online is the supposed third person in the room during the assault, Mark Judge, who is a friend of Kavanaugh's. It speaks volumes about what the Republicans think he might say, that in lieu of a declaration or live testimony, they accepted a 6-sentence letter from his lawyer. They're concerned about what he's going to say.
He feels a lot like Fredo, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, he's like the confidant that can end up screwing him over because he just seems like, from everything I tell about him, he's just like, I don't know, a rich kid from the DC area who drank too much and like published some books, but has never really done anything else with his life.
Yeah, there are these names and stories that I feel like seem so remarkable in their time, and then we look back on them and they're just ridiculous and emblematic of the indulgence of the era we lived in. You know, I did not inhale, or if the glove does not fit, you must acquit. These types of things. And I feel like Mark Judge is going to be one of those people who just, for the rest of history, is hanging there next to Monica Lewinsky's blue dress in the Smithsonian, and we don't even remember why we cared.
Well, I think he's the person that if you're trying to find out the truth of something, or if you're trying to hide bad information, there's no such thing. If someone supports a lot of people in the Senate are lawyers. You just don't leave a witness out if you think he's going to say something helpful for you. That just doesn't happen. You bring him in to testify. And so the fact that they've tried to hide him makes me think that if they don't know he's going to provide negative information, they're at least real concerned about what he's going to say.
Yeah, my understanding is that Mike Judge or whatever his name is, was basically drunk from like 1979 to 2003.
Yeah, so and that's really the only way he doesn't hurt Kavanaugh is if he just says, I don't remember any of it, because if it's true that Kavanaugh behaved as he did, someone like Mark Judge, it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to lie to the FBI. It's a crime. At this point, Mark Judge isn't accused of anything else.
Okay, so but like let's zoom out a little bit here. So the FBI is going to spend 1 week investigating, I guess, depending on what the press is saying in any given moment, the Ford and the Ramirez sexual assault claims, and maybe or maybe not the Swetnick sexual assault claims. So the FBI is going to spend a week opening up old graves and kicking over tombstones and whatever. I don't think, and this is the way I'm betting the market, and there is a lot of room to disagree with me on this. I don't think they're going to turn over anything new. So my angle on this is that in a week from now, we're going to be back to just playing he said, she said, except the debate's going to be on the Senate floor and not the Judiciary Committee. So I see this as very much just being a delay. Just it's going to be status quo ante when Brett Kavanaugh's name is called on the Senate floor. And I'm looking at the markets and pricing them in my head the same way, that nothing is going to change off of this.
I tend to agree with you, just because the only thing, given the age of the allegations, the only thing that really could change it, I think, is something that Mark Judge would say. I just can't see what else. Or maybe one of the friends who signed the letter saying they don't recall anything changes that story or adds some new detail or elucidates.
So I actually think, I think a lot of people's opinions about how the Brett Kavanaugh story is going to end is really driven by how they want it to end. And I hope I'm not one of these people, because I'm sitting here doing a political gambling podcast and writing a political gambling blog. By the way, we have a blog. It's starspangledgamblers.com. Check it. We've got hot fire going up there almost every day. I honestly think that this FBI probe, it actually opens up the chance for Republicans to steal some Democratic votes. Don't incinerate me, but I think that that's actually what we're headed towards. Most of the media attention has been on the embattled Republicans. Embattled's the wrong word, because none of them are really in danger of losing their election. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Jeff Flake. You hear these names over and over and over again. But there are 4 Democrats that are within the margin of error in defending Trump red states. You've heard their names a few times: Joe Manchin, Heidi Heitkamp, Claire McCaskill, Joe Donnelly. So if the FBI produces a report that either 1, exonerates Brett Kavanaugh, or 2, does not bring any information to corroborate the charges against him, it's maybe just enough moral cover for 1 or 2 of these Democratic senators to appease their Trump voters, their Trump Democrats, the Obama Trump Democrats, whatever you want to call them. So I think it actually opens up the opportunity for Kavanaugh to get more votes.
Certainly possible. I mean, the thing that I think about if I'm someone like Claire McCaskill, who's currently down in the polls, you have to imagine that, voting against Kavanaugh, there's other benefits to it than just the obvious immediate impact, which would be that you can become sort of a hero among a cause right now. Right now, I feel like women feel very disrespected by the Republican Party. And I think that by voting yes, you're not only going to obviously have a position to stand on to say, I didn't vote, or excuse me, by voting no, saying I didn't vote for him. But you also are going to, I think, pick up donations and volunteers along the way. I think you're going to pick up canvassers. I think there's a lot of energy among the base and a lot of anger among the base about this. And I think that there are benefits to voting no.
Yeah. And if you think about what you need, if you're in a really tight election and you're just trying to turn out your vote, yes, Democrats need dudes sitting in their man caves listening to Nickelback albums and wondering why the plant's not giving them as many hours as they did, or the unions doesn't have their back like it used to be. They need those voters. But the people who are going out and banging on their doors and telling them to vote, those are like the hardline liberal progressive types. So if you can't motivate those people to turn out your vote, you're in trouble. And I think that's a bigger thing for Claire McCaskill in Missouri and Joe Donnelly in Indiana, because McCaskill's got Kansas City and St. Louis. Those are 2 big cities full of these suburban moms that you keep hearing about, these college-educated suburban moms working for, I don't know, the health insurance company or the software company or something like that. And of course, Indiana has Indianapolis in the south suburbs of Chicago. So they certainly stand to lose a lot more by alienating that constituency than Joe Manchin in West Virginia or Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota. It's a different question for all of them, but I think politicians on the whole, they're kind of like water. They take the path of least resistance. So I am actually betting, what's the market at now? I'm betting yes at 57 cents that at least one Democrat will vote with the Republicans for Brett Kavanaugh, because with all these races being as tight as they are, I think that someone's going to pull the ripcord and look for the escape hatch.
Yeah, I think that's a tough call, but I agree with you. I was surprised when Bill Nelson announced that he was going to vote no, but now this investigation does give him and everybody on the fence cover to say that, especially, I mean, if you're really being really cynical about this, the Democrats that came out and announced their no votes, like Joe Donnelly and Bill Nelson, can now switch to yes after the FBI has investigated it, and kind of, I still think that'll anger their base, but they have more cover to do that now and still say, but I said no before the FBI got involved.
Yeah. I mean, I think of this FBI report as kind of like a big broad shoulder fullback or something. And these vulnerable Democrats can kind of run the ball into the Republican secondary behind it. I don't know. Bad metaphors. That's what we do. I still don't think that Brett Kavanaugh is going to get a unanimous vote from the Republican Party either. I'm still expecting at least one Republican to defect. So it seems more likely to me at this point that he wins with a plurality of Republicans and Democrats than just loses outright.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I'm Flake. I can't get a beat on him at all. He seems so conflicted and torn up about everything, and yet he seems to have so little to gain by voting yes.
So actually, let's take a quick spin through the odds on some of these senators to vote for Kavanaugh.
These are all kind of I call them two variable questions. There's the question of what is the politician's bias, and there's the question of will they find a skeleton in Brett Kavanaugh's closet that's undeniable. And I as I said, I've come down that no, I don't think that's going to happen. But we'll just run through these real quick. So will Doug Jones vote yay on Kavanaugh? Yes, 3 cents. No, 97 cents. I feel like we don't need to spend any time on that.
No, yeah. I mean, he's going to vote no. There's been no indication otherwise.
Rand Paul, yes, 80 cents. No, 20 cents.
Why is that even 20 cents? I'm kind of surprised. Has there been any indication he was going to vote against him?
I mean, Rand Paul's Rand Paul, right? And then there's always the chance that I guess the FBI finds something kind of damning. So, I mean, to me, that sounds like a quick play if you want to make 20 cents. I'm not really interested in most of these markets just because the volatility of this he said, she said game isn't worth trying to extract 20 cents on my dollar. Flake, yes on Kavanaugh by 1031. Ooh. 72 cents, yes. 28 cents, no. Those are some fucking bold motherfuckers taking that market.
Yeah, I mean, if you go into my head, I have to bet one of those. I'm doing no just because of the return. I just think that it's not, 3 times as likely that he's going to vote yes than no, in my opinion. I have no way to judge that, but that's just my gut feeling.
Bob Corker, Republican from Tennessee, yay on Kavanaugh by 1031. No on Kavanaugh is 20 cents. Yes is 80 cents. So we bought when this was down at 58 cents and sold it up at 93. So just so you know, teachable moment here. Bob Corker is one of these famous sort of more moderate Republican senators who gets a lot of press time for criticizing Donald Trump. But when he criticizes Donald Trump, it's almost always over foreign policy. He's the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He's a company man when it comes to domestic policy. So don't be a dummy and take the bait on all the press releases about how Trump's screwing up the Syria or Russia situation. Bob Corker is going to vote for the Supreme Court justice when it hits the floor. So we already I think we flipped a 68% profit on that, but we're not in it anymore. And if you want to get into it, sure, but we're not in it. Shelley Moore Capito, West Virginia Republican. Yes on Kavanaugh by 1031, 77 cents, 23 cents. I mean, these are all the same to me. Am I crazy?
I just, I've gotten no indication that she would vote no. I mean, I don't know. This is a tough question. Bear with me for a second here. I struggle over how to weigh the fact that a senator is a woman in evaluating this. I just think that, and I'm really trying not to touch on morality here, but where we are as a country now, I think that women take these allegations more seriously as they should be taken, and I think that men are still dismissive of them. And I'm not I know I'm just trying to talk about making money, but
I think that there's another layer to that, and that is that I think in the last few years, conservatives were really blindsided by the emergence and prominence of identity politics in American culture. Now, usually you use the word identity politics and then immediately people are like, red flag, he hates liberals. And it's true, I'm not a liberal. But the great innovation of the Trump presidency so far has been to make identity politics into a conservative thing. Great innovation in the sense that it moves product. Whether or not that's good for the health of our country is probably self-evident. But it's just not a natural thing for Republicans to think, well, I look like this or my gender is this, therefore my views should be this. So I think that with some of these women, the market offers an attractive return just because a lot of people who bet are betting from a point of view that most Republicans don't share, which is...
Well, I think the tack is a little different than just calling it identity politics, because I don't think, and I did not mean to imply to say that I'm a woman, so I'm going to vote pro-woman on this woman's issue. I think that as a woman, as a guy, most men have never had to worry about being assaulted in this way. It's just not something that most men worry about and ever had to deal with. As a woman, I find it hard to believe that there's a woman out there that hasn't had to worry about this. And I'm not talking about an actual direct encounter. I mean, just walking down the street late at night. It's something that I think is much more personal to women. And I think that men are lacking empathy on it now. And so, again, not passing judgment on that, but just it seems like women are more in tune to this issue because it is something that they have no choice but not facing. And men can kind of ignore it and have been ignoring it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I don't want to argue with that, but I think that part of the reason why we do this podcast is to try and talk about things that other people aren't talking about. And I think that the issue, so if I talk to women who are a generation older than me, people that are my mom's friend or my boss's friend or whatever it might be, the issue looks a little different for two reasons. And I'm not saying this is universal, but I'm saying it's a complicating factor that will be reflected eventually in the electoral marketplace. It looks different because some of them have sons, and some of them then have the fears that many men who are fearful that their ugly past will be dredged up now because of what we've seen in the Supreme Court. Some of them have sons, and they worry that their sons will be subject to allegations that aren't fair or true or whatever. And some of them also, like I talked to my mom, who was a feminist in the 1970s, and they're aghast at this idea that women are victims and women need protection and women need whatever. It's just like not an appealing narrative to a certain type of feminist. So I think that these issues are more complicated than people make them. And I think that we'll just see an interesting story play out in the long term because of it.
I have to say, I have been very surprised on social media how much the narrative you just spoke about of women being worried for their sons is, because I'm blindsided by it, because I think if you paid attention to the seriousness of what was alleged, you wouldn't be worried your son was going to get falsely accused of that. This is the point of this podcast, is not for me to pass judgment on that. I'm just surprised by how that you're right, that sentiment has been very prevalent among older women, and I'm just surprised.
Yeah, but that's the voting pattern. That's the voting pattern, no matter what information. This is how I am betting this whole event, is that no matter what information comes back, it will always revert back to a tribal, whether it's tribal by gender or tribal by party line, that the vote tallies will just revert back to that. I don't see any compelling new information coming, and I don't see any great moral reckoning coming. So I think that senators and the American people will just process this event through the lens of who they are and what their interests are, which is why I'm really pushing my chips in on Brett Kavanaugh getting through this confirmation. I'm betting my stack on that right now. And
yeah, I mean, it's two levels. One, the idea that anything new is going to come out, which seems unlikely. And two, if, like you said, if we're at status quo ante a week from now, will he have 50 votes? And I think that's no doubt yes.
So let's talk about one more of these senators, and then we'll find a new topic of conversation. The most interesting question is whether or not Joe Manchin from West Virginia, Democratic senator running for re-election, is going to vote yes on Kavanaugh. We're huge fans of Joe Manchin. Like, if you listen to our last podcast, I don't know, we probably spent like 73% of the time talking about the chubby we've got for the way he rolls.
Maybe more.
I mean, we should have spent more time talking about him. So right now, The yes share on Manchin voting for Kavanaugh is at 57 cents. The no share is at 43 cents. I'm not in it right now, but every hour that goes by makes me feel like maybe I should be in it.
You know, he's seen the polls to me. Last time I checked, I thought they were trending in his favor in Virginia. When you look at these Senate races, if you're looking at someone like Claire McCaskill versus Joe Manchin, are they winning or losing now? And think, what else could they really do in between now and November to move the needle? You know, they're not going to get any major legislation passed. Maybe there's going to be a scandal, but I doubt it with either of those two. So with Joe Manchin, with him being up in the polls, I think that he could feel comfortable being a no vote. Whereas McCaskill, what else is she going to do to leapfrog the Republican guy in the next 5 weeks?
Well, first of all, Claire McCaskill is like one of the great escape artists in Senate history. Anyway, Joe Manchin's interesting, though. The Patrick Morrisey, he's the Attorney General of West Virginia, a native-born son of New Jersey, just released an internal poll. And this is like the type of stuff that politicians do. It's like when investors go on CNBC and talk their book to try and juice the stock they just bought. Patrick Morrisey just released an internal poll that has him running even with Joe Manchin. So that's a little bit of a shocker. You got to think that lights a little bit of a fire under Manchin. And Manchin's also, he voted for Neil Gorsuch. He voted for Scott Pruitt, who was the former EPA administrator, who I think spent more time doing hookers and blow stuff than doing environmental regulating. He's continually been uninterested in the more liberal side of the Democratic agenda. He famously shot the cap and trade climate change bill to get elected in 2010. Everyone in Washington has him circled as someone who's going to vote for Brett Kavanaugh.
Well, I mean, I'm not really. If you put a lot of stock in that internal poll, then I have some land to sell you in Florida, because that's a clear indicator to me that he knows he's running behind in any legitimate poll. And so you release this to try to get momentum and have people believe that you are actually winning when you're not. So I'm very skeptical about the internal poll. I mean, the thing with Manchin is you can say, you know, like you said, I voted for Gorsuch. You nominate Amy Barrett. I'll vote for her. I'm just not voting for this guy. I think that there's cover for the Democratic senators that did vote for Gorsuch.
Voters have short memories, and depending on what you do now, and what is it? 40 or 50% of people vote in a given election. So a lot of it is trying to make sure that the right 40 or 50% of voters vote. So the last taste you leave in their mouth, it says a lot about who is going to show up on the polls on the first Tuesday in November. And I think then there's also the question, and this is why Joe Manchin's an interesting figure to me. There's the question of, what does the party want? What is the party's message? What is our collective goal? And then there's the question of what is our individual as senators' goal and our needs to survive. And I don't think that Joe Manchin's personal goals, and I don't think that political expediency even remotely match up to the goals of the Democratic Party right now. So he's like Pluto, right? Like, we thought he was a planet orbiting the Democratic star system, but now he's looking more and more like maybe just an overhyped asteroid or something like that.
Way to bring up an extremely controversial topic.
That's what we do. Hot takes all day long.
Hot takes, Pluto. Planet not. Up next week, is a hot dog a sandwich? all of Twitter's dumbest questions will be answered here.
Yeah. So you can get into that market if you want. I'm not in that market, but go with God. Brandon, you want to tell us about this hot fire segment you got lined up for us?
So here on Star Spangled Gamblers, we're all about trying to predict the future, but we're not just asking what the ultimate outcome is. We're looking at questions behind the questions. And so we've got this big vote coming up probably, a week from Monday, a week from Tuesday on the Kavanaugh hearing. And so we're just wondering, what's that like right before the vote's going to happen for these individual senators? This is a seminal moment in their year, if not their careers, in their year, something that will be remembered forever. You got to get psyched up for that. This is something that if you're, this is before you go talk to your boss in a big meeting, before you're going to ask for a raise, before you walk into court. There's something you're doing to get yourself in that mindset. So, Alex, what do you think your newfound favorite senator, Jeff Flake, is going to do before he goes to vote on this?
Probably talk about core strength with Paul Ryan.
What?
Have you seen that guy's abs?
Oh, man. Jeff Flake? Why have you seen his abs?
Okay. This is a Google rabbit hole for everyone, but Jeff Flake is, he goes on, Jeff Flake's yearly summer vacation is on a survivor trip with his sons. He literally goes to a deserted island with his sons and lives off the land for a week, and a boat comes and picks him up. So whether or not he's doing an ab workout before he votes, I can guarantee you he is definitely not taking the elevator to vote this time. Brandon, who do you got?
Senator Kamala Harris. Before she is going to give this vote, she's going to be drafting another goddamn email to me. Not me personally, but another listserv email, because within minutes of the Democrats walking out of that hearing on Friday, I got an email from Kamala Harris saying, I just walked out, signed this petition, or I asked for money. I don't know. I didn't read it.
So tell me this. When in all of this do you think that Kamala Harris is going to go Bible shopping?
What do you mean by Bible shopping?
Well, I mean, how else is she going to practice reciting her presidential oath of office?
I think she's got that picked out. Another person that I'm wondering what they're going to be doing before that vote is Mr. Mitch McConnell. And I'll tell you what I think he's going to be doing. I think he's going to be worried. I think he's going to be, this is his legacy. And I am shocked about what happened with the Affordable Care Act, because I just didn't think Mitch McConnell would put that to a vote unless he had the votes. But he took a gamble and he got burned. And he's got to be nervous before this, because this is something that's so important. And he's someone that doesn't usually take L's. And he took a big one on a very public one on the Affordable Care Act. And I just think that's got to be in the back of his mind as he calls for this vote.
So I was thinking about Mitch McConnell's counterpart, Chuck Schumer. And I realized, while I was trying to make a joke about what Chuck Schumer is doing, there's like literally nothing funny about Chuck Schumer. Like I can't think of a single thing that's funny about him, except that maybe he looks a little bit like Hannibal Lecter. I
think his hairline's pretty funny. It's the weirdest. It's like he's half bald, but it also is kind of like an abrupt start. Like whenever he's talking, it's all I can look at, and it makes me feel like a moron.
It's almost like he called Bosley, and they were like, "Well, it's going to be really expensive to have that hair transplant lasered on," and he's like, "Well, I'll just bring my own super glue," and they just did it with like Gorilla Glue or something.
Yes, because usually, like the line, if you're that bald, the line where your hair starts is like thinning and inconsistent, and his is like drawn on. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like such a moron when I can't look away whenever he's talking, because it's just a weird hairline, man.
It's taking him far, though. Maybe we can take a lesson.
Another person that I'm wondering what they're doing is Senator Bernie Sanders. My guess, he's probably in his office doing something real mundane, like talking to his cable provider about getting Showtime. Maybe he's paying like a car insurance bill. Maybe he's shopping for socks on Amazon.
Do you think, first of all, I think that's really funny. Do you think that there's like some curmudgeon's cafe somewhere in Washington, and like Bernie Sanders is getting his like old man turkey dinner, and like maybe Ted Cruz is sitting at the table like right across from him, and like they're both just really furious because Bernie Sanders is trying to like just change the date on the press release about millionaires and billionaires, and which has nothing to do with this. And Ted Cruz is sitting across the table, and he just doesn't know what to do, because there's no way to repeal Obamacare or defund Planned Parenthood and approve a Supreme Court justice at the same time.
That's funny to think, if they were in like the Senate cafeteria or dining room across from each other. I cannot imagine those two even having a conversation. I feel like they must just hate each other so much on an ideological basis. And Ted Cruz is such an imp. I feel like he would troll him in person and like try to get
everybody. One of my favorite quotes ever in politics is from Lindsey Graham, which is, I'll paraphrase it, but it's real close. It's, if Ted Cruz were shot dead on the Senate floor, you could not get a jury to convict him. Like,
oh my God,
everybody hates Ted Cruz.
I just imagine Ted walking up to him and being like, "How you doing, Bernie? How's life in New Hampshire?" Like, knowing he's from Vermont, and that just doing that to him every 2 weeks just to piss him off.
Elizabeth Warren is, I'm thinking about her before she votes. She's just persisting. Wherever she is, she's persisting.
That was, man, again, McConnell doesn't make a lot of missteps, but wow, that was a big one. She giving her a campaign slogan. Nevertheless, she persisted. He doesn't shoot himself in the foot like that very often.
Her website also is like, it's like a car dealership's website. You know, when you log in and like immediately some robot starts texting you about whether you want to buy a Corolla. Her website is like, as soon as you log into it, immediately a robot starts asking you if you want to buy a "Nevertheless She Persisted" t-shirt.
We should have, maybe after the crazy midterms end, we can have a looking to 2020 special, because I'm guessing that every yes on his someone running is undervalued at this point for the major players. That would be my guess. We talk about that later.
Marco Rubio. Is he even still in the Senate?
I think every once in a while he tweets a Bible verse out to let us know he's still alive. He does that.
He's been experimenting with different personalities since the last election. Give him a little room to read.
Yeah.
So every time you read about a gang in the Senate, I feel like Marco Rubio's in it, but like for once he's not. So maybe I'll put the punchline in the wrong place, but I just imagine Marco Rubio out somewhere in Northeast DC, like stealing cars and breaking into stores with some other gang to find some good male companionship now that he's been excluded from one. I don't know what a guy like him does outside the spotlight.
He needs a buddy. Honestly, he makes me think of that in that show Parks and Rec, where there's a politician that they work for that just sits in his office and smiles and stares at the wall. And then every time he sees someone, he talks about the weather, says something real innocuous. There's a theory that he's a robot.
Yeah. Actually, I won't editorialize, but it is shocking that we have not heard from little Marco.
Yeah, I mean, not taking a stance is his jam. Like no one's better at like coming in after the moment mattered to be really, really convinced of something. He'll whenever this shakes out and he knows how the public opinion is going to sway, then he'll come in, very strongly on the side of that.
Although, mark my words, public, we've not seen the last of Marco Rubio.
Yeah, that's a longer conversation for another day, but I agree. He's young. He's very ambitious. He's, I don't know what it's going to resurface as, but something's coming to us. He'll be back.
And so will we. That's our show for the week, guys. Thanks for listening. If you want more, if you've got suggestions, trades you're watching, questions you're interested in, we've got a blog. It's starspangledgamblers.com. You can also hit us up on Twitter and Instagram @StarSpangledGamblers. Thanks for listening.